Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I interview a world-class expert on talent and recruiting so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And I got to tell you, there has been a lot of talk lately about drones, artificial intelligence, satellites. This field is booming. And obviously that's going to have implications for people and talent. So I wanted to seek out an expert who knew the space, has been working in the space, and could give us some context, because this is literally rocket science. So it's pretty complex stuff, especially the analytics and AI part of it. So I finally connected with David Godwin. Now, David, our guest today, is the CEO of Slingshot Aerospace, based in Austin, Texas. And it's an advanced analytics company. They recently closed a $5 million round of venture capital led by ATX Venture Partners and Revolution's Rise of the Rest seed fund. So clearly they are doing something right. They've got about 30 folks on the team. And essentially what they do is they take artificial intelligence and they use it to analyze data from airplanes, from satellites, from drones. You can imagine all kinds of applications, both private and commercial and governmental. So with all that said, welcome David Godwin to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Jeff.
Great to have you on, and I really appreciate it. So why don't we start just at a 50,000 foot level? Give us 30 seconds about the business, because I'm sure I butchered the description. It's a pretty complex concept. How do you describe this to your mom?
No, yeah, I mean, I think you actually did a tremendous job. We have a lot of friends and supporters that try to describe it to other people, and sometimes it's a little off base, but you kind of nailed it. I mean, we take data from satellites and airplanes and drones, and not only imagery data, but also other signal data, so infrared,
Yep.
LiDAR, RF data, so all types of signals, and we bring it into our big data platform and big data like platform. We've modified it for those type of signals, and we can apply AI and machine learning against that to derive analytics and drive that down to the users in a very user-friendly way, using our portal products that are kind of low-click, user-friendly. My mom could use it type products.
Got it.
So it's really an end-to-end solution for dealing with what normally is very complex, manually intensive data to draw value out of. Yep. And building an entire, end-to-end chain for getting that data in, merging different data sources together, and then providing what would normally be a complex analytic in an easy to understand way for our end users.
So obviously you're not listening for Martians like in the movie Contact from space. So what specifically, give us an example of the types of data that you might capture and then feed to your customers.
Yeah, first, that would be super cool if we got to that point, but we're not there yet. But yeah, the types of data we would take are there's several commercially available and defense related kind of satellite assets that we would take data off of. So those satellites have sensors on them. Some of them have the equivalent of your iPhone's camera with a zoom lens. Some have super duper optical imagers that can zoom in and get to a pretty high resolution to things on the ground, and so that's on the imagery side, which is usually the easier way to explain it, because when we start talking about LiDAR and RF signals and
you lose people.
Infrared, people that don't get it, they've seen infrared in Predator or some movie, but
right.
It's just a different type of data to deal with. But it's worth noting that we take that data as well, and that's actually tends to be a little bit easier than imagery in some cases. And so in other cases it's not, depending on the data. And so but we take that data from the satellites, and you've seen it with Google Maps and the satellite imagery that Google Maps has. Google Maps is actually a combination of satellite imagery and high resolution aerial imagery. So a camera basically flying on a plane, taking pictures as it flies over an area. And we'll take that data in and modify it and standardize it as needed. So in the case of satellites, there can be cloud cover, there can be other things that make the image not look normal to the human eye, and so we'll correct the image through our automated platform, and then we'll standardize it so their machine learning algorithms can then do their thing and look for objects on the ground, look for change, look
Got
for
it. Got it.
things of interest.
So I can envision, I'm sure the listeners can envision, a lot of applications that are governmental, military, defense, et cetera. What would be a very common example of a non-military application or commercial application? What would I use this for?
Yeah, so one of the ones that is my favorite to talk about. It's not as much daily, but it's more seasonal. Is hurricanes and tornadoes.
Mm-hmm.
And so in those cases, we've dropped in along partners like Team Rubicon to help provide analytics on how can we get to people to rescue them or to provide relief efforts and relief services. And so we'll take we'll take a satellite image or the aerial image that our aerial partners provide, and we will combine that with infrared or SAR-based data, and we'll provide analytics that will tell the rescuers what roads are flooded. Do they need to use a boat or a car to get to somebody? Where can they stage their emergency forward bases for providing relief and supplies? So where can they get the 18-wheelers filled with trucks of water, so they can start distributing that stuff. And when parking lots in general tend to be lower level than most structures are built up to, because it's a place where you have flooding and normal rain times. And so finding a parking lot that has enough room for staging an operation to be able to help people out during a natural disaster is difficult. And so that type of thing is important. We also have disaster damage severity indexes where we have a debris analytic that can auto detect debris. We combine that with some of the other analytics we have, and then we can give a damage severity index.
So this is literally life or death stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, both on the defense side and the disaster recovery type side, disaster response. And so that's one of my favorite because it's awesome because we can help save lives, right? And then there's other things like for oil and gas, we can help detect encroachment on oil pipelines, or if they have oil assets in other places, we can look for potentially people tapping into their lines or stealing oil. And so there's other things we can do with the technology that's interesting. But those are two of my favorite because they're both good causes.
Let's shift to the people part now that we have the context. So I mentioned you got about 30 folks on the team. What's roughly the mix? Are these majority kind of data crunchers and data folks, or is it analysts? I know it's a combination, but what's the biggest part of the team?
It's a mix between software engineering and the data science folks, and then we've got a great BD sales team as well. We've got some great administrative support and operational support, but yeah, certainly it seems like we're constantly recruiting full stack software engineers and data scientists and scientists that have domain expertise in the type of signals, sensors that we're dealing with, as well as just general data science techniques. And so, and then full stack engineers. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with that kind of skill set, and so we're constantly looking for the best of the best when it comes to software engineers, because they have to be able to work alongside PhDs and super smart people on the science side.
And they're all located in Austin, or is this a distributed team?
So we have two offices. We have an office in LA and in Austin. And in our El Segundo LA office, we have about half the team, and in Austin we have the other half.
Got it. What led you to that decision? Is that just a recruiting strategy to get the talent, or something else?
It's funny. So my co-founders, both of them are coming out of the Air Force. So I'm a serial entrepreneur from background. This is my fourth, what I'm hoping is a successful startup, and feels that way.
Don't break the streak.
That's right. I had a couple failures before that, so it is a streak right now. So but no. So I came in first advising them. We were connected when they were leaving the Air Force, and they were looking to start a business, taking in this data that they knew from their Air Force experience. And when I heard there was this, my background's also tech guy, and so building data platforms and dealing with lots of data is a fun thing for me. And so when they started talking about all this data, I got super excited about the business, was giving them advice, and they asked if I would join the founding team and we could launch the business together. And so they were based out in LA. They wanted to stay there. I was based in Austin. We talked about it some and decided, should one of us move? And we were like, you know what? One of the hardest things in a startup these days, especially one that has high demand for talent like ours, is access to talent, right? And good talent.
Sure.
LA and Austin are just both great markets for the business we're in. LA has incredible talent when it comes to space and air-based technology and
Is that just
imaging.
because of the aerospace industry there?
That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's really, really strong area for that. And so there's just a lot of great technical talent there, as well as a lot of great leadership talent with the Air Force Base out there and the aerospace companies. It just gave us a really good pool of sales and leadership and very direct science kind of talent. Now, Austin, on the other hand, has incredible software engineering and data scientists coming out of UT. And we've just got a really strong community in that area as well. And so, we can tap into both areas for any set of skills that we want. And we formed up, the teams and the way we communicate around that. And, we've got a decent burn on travel because we encourage, especially the leadership team, but as well as the employees working together on product teams to, get to each location as much as possible, within reason and, stay connected to each other. And so we try to de-risk that a little bit.
How do you make sure the culture doesn't fragment and that the teams are not just working together, but that you're hiring people that share the same DNA across both offices?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we're still trying to figure some of that out. But right now, our theory is one is we make sure that all the founders talk to everyone we hire. There may be exceptions where one of us can't make it and we talk to the other ones and give a thumbs up. But in general, all three founders will talk to every candidate that we've hired so far. Mm-hmm. It's not real scalable, and eventually we'll have to change that. But we've been very conscious about the hiring process and making sure that we have cultural interview is just as important as technical, right? In the case of a technical hire, and even more so in some cases, because even if they don't have an exact technology fit, if they're a smart, enthusiastic individual that's obviously a problem solver, then that technical piece can be, they can get there, in all cases. And so, but the personality thing, if someone's just by nature a negative Nelly or whatever you want to call it, right? That we don't want that person on the team because that's not something that people change readily, and it's really hard for a corporation to change that in somebody. And so we just look for those signs of would we want to hang out with these people, go to happy hour with them, whatever that metric is for each of us, and we've been pretty good at that. Early on we learned it as we had a couple of hard lessons with some things, but we've done a really good job since then of managing that. And then the other thing is we're an interesting space because defense is our vertical that we've got most of our business through right now. We're expanding other verticals, but there's this constant well, are you a defense contractor or are you really a product company, right? Yeah. And so we've also made that part of our DNA process when hiring. Part of our DNA. You mentioned DNA. Part of our DNA. Part of our process when hiring is making sure that the people we hire understand the value of having a product company versus just being a service company that does everything and anything, right? Yep. So we talk very specifically about our products, where we're going with them, the importance of, even if they happen to be on the implementation team or services team that's implementing our products within customers, that they know that that should be driving towards the product as well. So kind of having this kind of product first mentality is really important to us. And so
you mentioned assessing for DNA. How do you accurately assess or try to assess candidates for DNA? Technical skills I get, but the DNA is much harder, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's a tough question to answer because my initial that's why I like talking to each one, because I try to use a little bit of gut, which isn't going to be a great, probably popular answer. But I mean, there's I believe in transparency and openness and just being, not being coy during conversations. And so for me, there's just certain things that I look for. Openness and transparency is one of them, so I'll kind of throw out some questions around, what do you do for fun? Those type of things that'll help draw personal conversations out and give me a sense of who they really are versus, focusing so much on the experience side. We will dig into experience, and especially if the person has, a consistent trend of 1 or 2 year jobs, right? Then, I'll approach that pretty direct on and say, hey, look, there's this, again, with the transparency and openness in mind, right? I'll ask, what's, can you tell me more about that? Like, what this looks like a trend, and usually they have, someone will have a fine answer for it. But occasionally someone will say, oh yeah, I hated that company. They suck so bad. My manager was a jerk, whatever. Right. And if they're going to go say that outright without giving context, or at least giving the other side of the story, right?
Yeah.
Then, and I'll ask more about it to make sure that maybe they really did have a jerk as boss, right? Whatever. But, if they're just willing to bash somebody on the first call with CEO of the company, right? Like that's a little bit of a warning for me. And so I don't know how to better answer that, honestly. It's
And who does the reference checks? Do you do it yourself, or does the hiring manager do it?
yeah, we have we have a HR recruiting person that takes care of coordinating the interview process, making sure it flows really well, making sure that we respond quickly to the candidates and we get them answers within a reasonable amount of time, especially in highly competitive positions, which we treat those as literally one of the top priorities in the company. Is if we know we're hiring a data scientist or a software engineer, that role in that interview process is prioritized.
Right.
That person handles that, and then they also handle the on-ramping type stuff as well as the background checks.
Got it. I understand. You mentioned some tough lessons that you've learned along the way. Without going into specifics or names or anything, what's kind of the common patterns or themes of what you missed? And when you look back, what would you say, if only we had done X or Y?
It's a tricky question because we're a small team, so we haven't had that many people leave.
Well, then we can expand it. We can expand it beyond this company.
Okay.
Your previous experience, you obviously hired a lot of people in four companies.
Yeah. So definitely. So I think there's and this isn't talking about this company specifically, but I'll go back to some previous companies where I've had, I guess I'm an optimist by nature. So I've had my lumps because I've allowed people to stay and tried to shift them into new positions or adjust for where they're not performing or not engaged. And
Right.
almost every time, I think it's, where we really got burned in the past was around someone that generally had a hard time engaging with a positive attitude,
Right.
and not just like superficial positive attitude, but obviously there was something that in the past happened to them when it came to having a job that caused them to not want to be in a good place. I mean, even if we provided the perfect place, I don't know that they would be happy, right? Like,
Yeah. Right.
So there's just this underlying kind of, toxic current that comes with that, where it's like, I always want to be the naysayer of something that the company may try or do or may explore, right? And so there's that. And then, and what happens naturally then is they don't perform real well in the role they're in. So then historically, my reaction to that was, okay, well, let's try to move them over to this area, or let's try to limit their responsibility and see if they can just focus on this one area and do really well there. And in a hope that we can, get them engaged and get them excited and get them to where they're fully part of the team and firing on all cylinders. And because it's not because I'm unhappy because they're not firing on all cylinders, but it's that the rest of the team notices, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and so it's just it becomes a little bit of a demoralizing type thing. And so, I think that's the type of thing that really, from a experience standpoint, I've learned and still trying to learn and be better about, which is, if you've got somebody that's not pulling alongside, keeping up with the rest of the team, and you may give them one or two chances, but at some point you've just got to be strong enough to go and say, we got to cut that person. I may like them, I may think they're a really smart individual, which has been the case in almost all these times, right?
Yep.
But I've got to cut it. It's the right thing to do for the company.
And how long have you learned to give someone before you make that difficult decision? What do you view? It's a question that people banter about for years and years.
Yeah, no, I think it, I mean, my opinion, and this is again, my opinion, so that's worth, but I think that, I think that if, I would say it depends on the size of the company. I think if you're a early stage startup, so Series A or younger, right? Then you should be, you might give someone 3 months to kind of get their shit together and get their stuff together.
No, I agree.
And then kind of push back whatever the issue is. Again, some people have personal things going on. There's lots of reasons or valid reasons, but at some level, the company, I mean, a startup especially, is going to live or die by people doing their job, right? And And then if the startup doesn't succeed, I'm trying to justify this a little bit, but this is important for everyone to know. If the startup doesn't succeed because you let too many individuals that just aren't pulling their weight sit around, then you've just caused 20, 30 people their jobs and their family and their livelihood.
Yeah,
and that impacts people.
When you get to be a larger company with more resources, more depth, more cash, more runway, perhaps you can wait a little bit longer. But this is the success of the company or failure.
Totally. Yep. Totally. And so so I would say 3 months. I would be very aggressive, and I have been in more recent past on trying to remediate that, and like push them and challenge them and try to help them. And again, transparency and openness is really valuable there. It's always tricky with HR laws and all that stuff. But at the same time, I think being very open and direct and trying to let people know where you sit with them is just really important, and letting them know that, and then checking in with them, weeks after that, and seeing what can you do to help them and support them in their hopefully their goal and your goal for them to be fully pulling their weight, if that makes sense. And that's worked for me. I mean, so there's been the horror stories, and then I've had several employees that I just I'm so thankful they're still around, and they've turned out to be really incredible employees.
Each is an individual case-by-case basis.
That's right. Yep.
Well, David, I thank you for making the time and sharing your wisdom with us, both from Slingshot Aerospace and your previous experience, building a company, raising venture capital, getting up to 30 employees, not easy things to do. So I commend you for that. How can people learn more about Slingshot or get in touch?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, www.slingshotaerospace.com. Or you can, if it's interested in the services we provide, we have an email address, sales@slingshotaerospace.com. And those are both the best ways to reach out to us and kind of see what we're about.
Fantastic. Thanks again, David. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Jeff.